Welcome to Trendbible Stories, where real emotions meet unforgettable tales. If you love stories that touch your heart and remind you of the power of kindness, stay with us till the end. This is the story of a millionaire's deaf son, a crying boy no one understood, and a little girl who changed everything, with just her hands. It began in the quiet town of Fairhope, a place of sun-washed streets, trimmed hedges, and laughter that usually came from the playground across Elm Street. But for one boy, laughter never came. His name was Oliver Reynard, son of the richest man in town, Mr. Charles Reynard, a man who owned half the buildings that stood against the skyline. Oliver was 7. He had soft brown hair that curled at the ends and eyes that carried more silence than any child should bear. He couldn't hear. Not the birds in the morning, not the waves crashing outside his window, not even the sound of his own father's voice. Since his mother's passing 2 years ago, Oliver had become even quieter, even lonelier. Every day, his nanny, Mrs. Poole, tried to bring him toys, shiny cars, robots, puzzles, but no matter what she gave, the boy would end up crying. Sometimes softly, sometimes until his chest hurt. People whispered about it. "Poor child," they said, "he's got everything money can buy, except happiness." And in that mansion, filled with marble floors and cold silence, Charles Reynard, the millionaire father, worked harder and talked less. He couldn't understand his son. He loved him, deeply, fiercely, but he didn't know how to reach him. One morning, the chauffeur pulled up to Elm Park, where other children were already running across the grass. Charles had been advised to let Oliver socialize more, though the boy never seemed to join in. So he sat on a bench, clutching a worn-out plush elephant. His lips trembled, his eyes darting from laughing faces to the ground. And that's when she appeared, a little girl in a red dress, her hair tied up in messy braids, carrying a bucket of chalks. Her name was Lily. She was just 6, from a modest family who lived on the edge of town. She didn't know who Oliver was, nor how much money his father had. All she saw was a boy sitting alone, crying. She walked up and said, "Hey, do you want to draw with me?" But Oliver didn't answer. He just stared at her, confused, tears still fresh on his cheeks. "Can you hear me?" she asked again, louder this time, still nothing. Then Lily noticed something. The way he tilted his head, the way his lips parted slightly but made no sound. Her mother had once told her about a boy in her class who couldn't hear, and how they used their hands to talk. So Lily, remembering a few signs her mother had shown her long ago, signed slowly, "Hello, are you okay?" Oliver froze. His small eyes widened as though a door had opened inside him that had been locked for years. His hands trembled before he slowly signed back. "You know this?" Lily smiled. "A little," she signed. "My mom taught me." And that was the first time Oliver didn't cry that day. From then on, every morning, Lily would come to the park early with her chalks. Oliver's driver would bring him, and though at first the chauffeur thought it was a waste of time, soon even he noticed the difference. The boy smiled. He didn't clutch his toy for comfort anymore. He held chalk, drawing shapes with Lily on the pavement. Sometimes they drew animals, a cat, a sun, a house with smoke curling up from the chimney. Sometimes Lily taught him new signs, colors, feelings, animals. Oliver would mimic her hands, sometimes wrong, sometimes right, but always trying. At the mansion, Mrs. Poole was stunned to find the boy humming softly one afternoon. Not with sound, but with joy. The tears that once filled the house had faded. For the first time in years, Charles noticed the laughter in his son's eyes, though he still didn't know why. One evening, Charles asked his chauffeur, "What's changed with Oliver lately?" "He seems different." The man cleared his throat. "There's a girl, sir." "A little one? She plays with him at the park. Seems she understands him somehow." "Understands?" Charles frowned. "How can she when even his teachers can't?" "Sir," the chauffeur said carefully, "she talks with her hands." Charles didn't respond right away, but that night, as he stood in his study staring at a photo of his late wife, the woman who had been the bridge between him and his son, he felt a twist of guilt. She had always begged him to learn sign language, to try to reach Oliver through his world of silence. He never did. Business, meetings, deadlines, all had seemed more urgent. Now the child he loved most was being reached by someone else's child. The next morning, Charles decided to go to the park himself. He wore a casual coat, trying not to attract attention. He stood near the oak tree, watching from afar. There they were, Oliver and Lily, kneeling on the pavement, giggling without sound, their fingers dancing through the air. Oliver's face glowed with a happiness Charles had never seen. The chalk drawings stretched across the ground like stories, a family, a dog, and in the middle, two stick figures holding hands. Something cracked in Charles's heart. The tears came before he could stop them. He walked forward slowly, his shoes crunching the gravel. Oliver noticed and turned, smiling wide. Then his smile faded. He didn't know how to talk to his father. Lily stood protectively beside him, sensing his fear. Charles knelt. He didn't speak at first. Instead, he pointed at the drawings. "You drew these?" he asked gently, even though he knew the boy couldn't hear. Then, uncertainly, he signed, not perfectly, but enough for Oliver to understand. "Beautiful." Oliver's eyes widened again, tears filling them. He rushed forward and hugged his father tight. Lily watched quietly, smiling through her own tears. For once, Charles didn't feel like a millionaire. He felt like a father finally learning to love in his son's language. Over the next weeks, Charles made a decision that surprised everyone in town. He took time off work. He hired a sign language teacher, not for Oliver, but for himself. Every evening, he sat with his son, practicing letters, words, and expressions. Sometimes he messed up and they'd both laugh. Sometimes he cried in frustration when he couldn't get it right. But Oliver never gave up on him, and neither did Lily. She still came to the park. Still played, still taught Oliver words she was learning too. The three of them became an unusual little circle. A billionaire, his deaf son, and a bright girl with kindness bigger than the world. Word spread through the town, as word always does. Reporters wrote about how Charles Reynard, the once distant tycoon, had changed. He started funding schools for children with disabilities, signing his speeches in both English and sign language. The community that had once pitied the boy now looked up to him. But beneath the fame and praise, the true hero remained the little girl who started it all. One spring afternoon, Charles invited Lily and her mother to their mansion for lunch. Lily had never been inside such a grand house before. The chandeliers, the long hallway, the scent of flowers everywhere. But she didn't look scared. She just smiled and signed hello to Oliver the moment she saw him. During lunch, Charles looked across the table at her and said softly, "You gave my son back to me, Lily. I don't know how to thank you."